I want to speak about a word we often reserve for manuscripts and film reels, a word that feels technical, maybe even a little cold. Edit. We don't often think to apply it to ourselves, to the narrative we're living. We think in grand, permanent strokes, success or failure, on the path or lost, holding on or giving up. But what if there's a more gentle, more powerful space in between? She takes a slow breath, her hands coming together as if holding something delicate. Edit your life, don't end your dream. An editor's work is not destruction, it is not burning the manuscript, it is the meticulous, loving act of asking what is essential. It is removing the distracting subplot so the main story can shine. It is tightening the dialogue so the truth rings clear. It is cutting the beautiful, meandering scene that, for all its loveliness, slows the heart of the film. Your dream is that heart, it is the core truth. The relentless why, it is the theme of your story, but the life you're building around it, that is the draft, and a draft, by its very nature, is meant to be revised. That job you took as a stepping stone that has become a heavy, permanent stone. That might be a scene that needs cutting. The resentment you're carrying from an old failure, a line you keep reciting to yourself that no longer serves the character you've become, that can be deleted. The expectations you absorbed, like stage directions from a director you never agreed to work with, those can be rewritten. We confuse the draft for the destiny. We believe that to change the pages, to cross out a paragraph we once thought was brilliant, is to betray the story itself. But the betrayal is in the refusal to edit. It is clinging to the first draft out of sentiment, or fear of the blank space, while the true, powerful story waits, buried under what is merely adequate. The metaphor is not merely a decorative turn of phrase. It is the central, liberating lens through which the entire argument comes into focus. It directly challenges a dominant, often unconscious, narrative we hold about our own existence, that life is a singular performance, a final exam where every mark is permanent, and the script is handed to us at birth with only minor room for improvisation. This view breeds a climate of immense anxiety. We see our choices as indelible ink on a pristine page, fearing a wrong word will ruin the entire document. We believe that to backtrack, to change our minds, or to abandon a path is to render all prior effort a wasted prologue. The concept of the editable draft shatters this illusion of permanence. It proposes that our lives are not inscribed in stone, but composed in a more forgiving medium, perhaps pencil, perhaps on a word processor where the undo function is always available. We are not archivists of a finished record. We are authors and editors in the active, ongoing process of creation. This reframing is transformative because it swaps a mindset of judgment for one of agency. When life is a performance, a misstep is a flaw witnessed by an imagined audience. When life is a draft, a misstep is simply a sentence that didn't convey the intended meaning, a paragraph that wandered off topic. The internal critic's voice shifts from, "you failed," to "this section isn't working yet." The emotional weight changes from the shame of being off course to the focused agency of problem solving. It makes the complex, often painful work of personal growth feel manageable and professional. You are not a failure fumbling in the dark. You are a skilled wordsmith at her desk, squinting at a challenging passage in the morning light, knowing that with patience and discernment, she can find a better way to phrase it. This perspective validates the inherent messiness of becoming. First drafts are supposed to be sprawling, uncertain, and full of excess. They are where you discover what you're actually trying to say. The beautiful subplot you loved in Chapter 2 might need to be cut for the sake of the novel's pace in Chapter 10, and that is not a tragedy. It is the story getting stronger. Ultimately, this keynote empowers us to engage with our own lives as a creative collaboration with experience. It grants us the permission inherent in all artistic endeavors, the permission to experiment, to iterate, to kill our darlings when they no longer serve the narrative's truth. The goal is not a flawless first attempt, which is an impossible fiction, but a courageous and continuous process of refinement. We move from being passive readers of our own history, lamenting plot holes, to active editors, asking the essential questions of every scene, relationship, and habit. Does this advance the core theme? Is this character authentic? Does this dialogue ring true? The dream provides the genre and the central conflict, but the draft, the daily living, is ours to write, revise, and rewrite until the story feels coherent, compelling, and uniquely, authentically ours. The power lies in understanding that the editing process itself, with its cuts and its additions, its frustrations and its breakthroughs, is not a distraction from the life we are meant to live. It is the very act of living it with intention. This distinction is the crucial act of discernment upon which all successful editing depends. Without it, we are lost, revising blindly and often sabotaging the very thing we seek to enhance. The dream, as presented, is not a specific job title, a dollar amount, or a particular accolade. Those are often just the setting or the costume. The dream is the immutable core, the gravitational center. It is the why made manifest as a feeling, a purpose, a fundamental need of the spirit. It is the need to connect, to create beauty, to solve a profound problem, to understand a hidden truth, to build a sanctuary. It is the thematic heart of your story, redemption, freedom, belonging, discovery. This core is sacred and enduring. It may clarify over time, but its essential nature remains. To end, this dream is an act of spiritual amputation, a silencing of the inner compass. The life built around it, however, is entirely structural. It is the plot, the character choices, the scenes and settings. It is the current job that funds the exploration, the city you live in, the daily routines, the network of relationships, the specific projects you undertake. This is the draft material. It is meant to be in service to the core, to give it form and motion in the world. The peril arises when we confuse the temporary container for the eternal content. We fall in love with a particular role, the brilliant scientist, the charismatic leader, and when that role is challenged or outgrown, we believe the dream of pursuing truth or inspiring change is dying with it. We cling to a crumbling business model, thinking it is synonymous with the dream of building community or fostering independence. We defend toxic patterns because they are the familiar set pieces in the drama we know how to perform. This keynote insists on a radical separation. It asks us to perform a kind of spiritual archaeology, to brush away the dirt of daily habit and circumstantial detail, to touch the artifact of original purpose beneath. We must hold our current circumstances up to the light of that purpose and ask, with unflinching honesty, is this structure channeling energy toward the core, or is it absorbing energy for its own maintenance? The unfulfilling job in the prestigious firm might be a majestic, gilded set piece that is actually draining the life from your dream of creative expression. The relentless pursuit of a certain lifestyle might be a thrilling subplot that has completely derailed the main narrative of finding peace. Editing your life, therefore, is not a random act of destruction or walking away. It is the surgical, precise work of aligning the outer architecture with the inner blueprint. You change the how so the what can flourish. You might demolish a whole wing of your existence, a career, a relationship, a belief, not because it is evil, but because it was built for a different dream, an older version of yourself, or for someone else's expectations. You are not betraying the dream by editing the life. You are, for the first time, building a life worthy of housing it. The dream remains the constant, the North Star. The life is the ship, and it is our solemn, ongoing duty to repair its hull, adjust its sails, and sometimes change its entire course to sail toward that fixed and guiding light. This reframing is essential because it disarms the primary defense mechanism that keeps us stuck, the belief that making a change is an act of violence against our past selves or a rejection of our own effort. We often approach necessary life adjustments with the emotional charge of a critic, filled with judgment, frustration, and a sense of punitive correction. We should on ourselves, creating a climate of guilt where editing feels like admitting failure. But the speech consciously shifts the emotional landscape from the courtroom to the creator's studio, Editing in its truest artistic form is not criticism, it is curation. It is the deepest form of respect for the work and its potential. It is done not with a red pen of condemnation, but with the careful hands of someone who believes so profoundly in the story's possibility that they will endure the temporary pain of revision to see it realized. This transforms the act from something we dread into something we can approach with a sense of sacred duty. The love in this equation is twofold. First, it is love for the dream itself, that core, unchanging truth. That love is what fuels the bravery to make hard cuts. You love the destination more than you love the familiar, winding road that's leading you astray. Second, and more subtly, it is a compassionate love for the dreamer, for yourself. It acknowledges that the earlier drafts, the clunky sentences, the meandering subplots, were necessary. They were the process of discovery. To edit with love means to look at those past choices not with scorn, but with the understanding that you were writing with the tools and knowledge you had at the time. You are not a fool for what you wrote then. You are wiser now for knowing what to change. This creates a psychological safety that allows for clear-eyed action. You can say, this beautiful paragraph no longer fits, without the added crippling narrative of, and I was an idiot for writing it. The courage is then born from this foundation of love, not from sheer willpower. It is the courage of the surgeon, whose steady hand is guided by a commitment to heal, not to harm. It takes courage to delete a witty line you're proud of, because it undermines a character's sincerity. It takes equal courage to leave a job with the impressive title that is draining your soul, because you must trust that your core purpose, your dream of creating, of helping, of building, is more important than the badge you wear. This courage is quiet. It is not the dramatic, chest-thumping bravery of starting a revolution, but the intimate, daily bravery of facing the blank page after a deletion and trusting that a better word will come. It is the courage to sit in the silence of a newly simplified life, in that edited-down space, and have faith that you have not created a void, but have in fact made room for a truth that was always meant to be there. Editing becomes then the ultimate act of fidelity to your dream, to your future self, and to the authentic story that is waiting, beneath all the noise, to finally be told. The speech posits that the ultimate reward for the courageous work of editing is not merely a cleaner or more efficient life, but access to a profound and generative emptiness. We are culturally conditioned to abhor a vacuum, to see blank space as wasted space, and silence as an absence of ideas. We rush to fill our calendars, our minds, and our horizons with noise and motion, fearing that stillness signifies stagnation. Yet this keynote offers a counterintuitive truth. The most fertile ground for the dream is not a crowded field, but a cleared plot. When we edit, when we delete the distracting subplot, conclude the draining commitment, or silence the internal critic's repetitive line, we are not left with nothing. We are left with a specific, potent something, blank space. This space is the speech's most important offering. It is the magic waiting to enter. This blank space is first a sensory reset. In the constant hum of a cluttered life, our inner voice, the quiet co-writer of our destiny, is drowned out. We can only hear the loudest, most urgent demands, the deadlines, the expectations, the buzzing notifications of the current draft. When we create silence by removing those noises, our auditory palette resets. We begin to perceive subtler frequencies, the intuitive nudge, the unexpected memory that feels like a clue, the quiet longing that points toward a forgotten path. The blank space on the page is an invitation, not a rebuke. It is the pause in the music that makes the next note significant. It is the moment in the film where the character, having lost everything, simply sits, and in that stillness, their true resolve crystallizes. We cannot hear the dream's specific, whispered instructions when we are shouting over it with busyness. Furthermore, this space is the essential playground for imagination and serendipity. A life packed solid with predetermined plans and obligations has no room for the unforeseen, the better idea, the chance encounter that realigns everything. Editing creates margin. It is in this margin that inspiration, that quiet co-writer, can finally come in. A new possibility, a broader plot twist, a solution you were too cluttered to see. These elements do not force their way into a packed schedule. They float into open awareness. The blank space is literally the psychological and temporal room for your dream to evolve. The dream you articulated 5 years ago was a first draft. It needs room to breathe, to mature, to be edited itself by your newer, wiser perspective. That cannot happen if it is trapped in a labyrinth of outdated actions and commitments that were built around its earlier, less refined version. By bravely creating blank spaces in your day, your commitments, your identity, you are not abandoning the dream. You are building a sanctuary for it, a quiet room where it can finally speak to you in its current, more evolved voice, and where you can listen well enough to write down what it says. This evolution is the quiet, profound victory at the end of the editing process. Throughout the speech, the focus moves from external metrics and borrowed scripts to an internal, almost tactile sense of authenticity. The initial state is one of performing a life assembled from various sources, parental expectations, societal definitions of success, the compare, and despair scroll through curated highlights of others' lives. We are following stage directions from a director we never agreed to work with. The editing process, then, is the deliberate, sometimes painful work of crossing out those foreign lines and writing our own in the margin. The ultimate goal is not a life that looks impressive from the outside, a common, flashy darling we must often kill, but a life that feels true in the living of it. The sigh of relief is the key signal. It is the somatic, undeniable release of tension when the narrative you are living finally synchronizes with the narrative you deeply are. This is the moment you recognize your own story. That recognition is the antithesis of feeling lost or like an imposter. It is the feeling of coming home to your own decisions, your own values, your own peculiar rhythm. The speech suggests that authenticity is not a static quality we possess, but a coherence we achieve through iterative editing. We try on plots, the corporate chapter, the nomadic phase, the artistic pursuit, and through the process of living them, we discern what resonates and what rings hollow. The hollow parts are not failures. They are the passages marked for deletion because they were written in a voice that wasn't ours. The true story emerges through this continual refinement, this peeling away of the not, you to reveal the is you. The final measure of a successful edit is not applause, but that deep internal sense of alignment where your daily actions feel like a natural and honest expression of your core dream, not a strained performance of someone else's version of it. This shift is the reclamation of authorship. When you live by external validation, you are constantly handing your manuscript to invisible critics, revising based on imagined feedback and fearing a bad review. The energy is outward, anxious, and exhausting. The process of conscientious editing redirects that energy inward. You become your own first and most important reader. The question changes from "will this look good?" to "does this feel true?" The authority transfers from a nebulous "they" to a grounded "I." The resulting narrative may be quieter, messier, or less conventionally impressive. It might have unexpected plot twists and unresolved tensions, but it will have the unmistakable stamp of your own handwriting. You will recognize the protagonist's voice as your own, the dilemmas as your genuine struggles, and the joys as your authentic triumphs. This is the final, liberating keynote, that the purpose of editing your life is not to create a perfect, polished, award-winning blockbuster. It is to write a story so genuinely your own that you can read it back, scene by edited scene, choice by conscious choice, and with that sigh of relief know it for what it is, yours.